Hey guys, so I'm going to go over the fundamentals of logo design in this lecture. Just sitting on my couch here, but this is always a kind of a fun subject, logos. So these are our learning objectives. Basically, we'll learn rules for designing an aesthetically appealing logo, learn basic logo anatomy, learn how to use symbolism and visual analogy to create a story or establish a visual theme. We'll learn how to recognize good or bad logo designs and understand why they might be considered good or bad. We'll learn some of the technical rules for designing a successful professional logo. We'll learn the basic process of logo design. We'll learn different file types needed for a logo and their applications. We'll learn how to properly name logo files. We'll learn how to set up an organized folder structure for your logo files. And this one we're not going to cover so much in this lecture. And I'm guessing this lecture will probably be over several videos. So ask yourself, do you guys recognize this logo? This is kind of an unnecessary question to ask. Honestly, mostly everybody on the globe recognizes this logo. And why is this logo successful? You can ask yourself that as well. Why is it so popular? Why is it globally recognized? Personally, I would say this logo is successful, not necessarily because it's amazingly well designed, but because Nike has spent a ton of money on advertising over the years, and the logo has remained very much the same since the start, which was in 1971. So that's pretty much one of the main reasons why this logo is as successful as it is just because the amount of money that they have thrown at it has made it, more successful. So I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. That's not really... Okay. So next up, we'll talk about some of the logo variations that the Nike logo has, which isn't there's not a lot of variation between the different logos that it uses. But you can see them here. So this is typical of logos, especially from larger companies. Some variation in the logo design is nice because it offers flexibility in placement. So you can see one logo has the text included and one is just the symbol or mark or icon of the logo by itself. So there's a couple variations there. So check mark on the shoe. The check mark by itself works really well on the shoe. While the full logo does seem to work well on other applications, such as the front of the shirt, both logos are actually recognized by the greater public as Nike. That's because Nike's brand is strong enough to support the different variations in its logos. You can't have too many variations in your logo, or your variations can differ too much from each other for the public to recognize them as your logo. So you need to be careful when you create a logo with variations, especially for a smaller company. The bigger marketing budgets, they can create more variations of their logo and still be successful because they can invest the time and capital into getting the public to recognize the variations as part of one brand. But if you're designing for a smaller company, you'll want to limit logo variation quite a bit. Especially like a local business, you want to limit that logo variation. Okay, so Nike is also a great example of symbolism. It does have quite a bit of symbolism built into it. Nike is the ancient Greek goddess. She's a winged goddess of victory. And the check mark is actually derived from the shape of her wing. So ask yourself, why do you think the goddess of victory ties into what Nike sells and who they sell their products to? Why did they decide to put Nike in there with their logo? Well, Nike does make athletic wear for athletes. They sell a lot of their products to athletes. Their shoes, they actually started off as a shoe company, I believe. And the check mark, being the symbol of Nike, she's associated with speed, movement, and victory. And all of those things tie into what an athlete wants most, right? They want to win. So it makes sense that they chose the wing for the goddess Nike, and the word Nike even as their brand so that they can cater to the needs of athletes who want to win. And Nike is the goddess of victory, so it all ties together. Great use of symbolism. Here's some other examples that use symbolism in their design. These aren't necessarily for companies, but it's kind of like a faux logo. But threesome, bipolar, you can see the frowny face and the smiley face there, which ties into the meaning of bipolar. You know, there's three humps on this heart, which, you know, ties into threesome. Kind of cute. So I'm going to ask you guys, what do you know, here's another one here. Actually, a great example of a hidden image within a logo. It's a hidden shape of a cyclist. The Tour de France is a cycling, basically a race in France of cyclists. You know, so tying in symbolism is a great idea, although not required for successful logo design. One thing about logo design, you know, symbolism that you might run into a problem when you accidentally make symbolism that you don't intend. You know, like with these examples here, you know, the designer did not initially mean to make a logo that symbolized maybe something vulgar, and the same goes for this one as well. There's a visual metaphor or unintended symbolism contained inside of these unfortunate examples here. So avoid the pitfall of including unintended symbolism by showing others your design and seeing what they think. Maybe they'll catch something that you didn't, so that you don't end up making mistakes like this, hopefully. So, oops, I'm not sure what happened there. So we'll go into the basic logo anatomy now. So usually most logos consist of a logo typeface, which is almost always the name of the company. As you can see, this is Delta, so the name, the logo type here. And then a symbol or icon or mark, you know, any of those words can be used, symbol, icon, mark. And they're put together in some sort of arrangement. Most companies have multiple variations of how they place the type and the symbol together, and this helps with flexibility in placement. This could be, you know, thought of as a variation of this logo, much like the Nike check by itself or with the text. Of course, this still has both elements, but they're just slightly different arrangements. And like I said, this helps with flexibility in placement. Sometimes a logo tagline might be included, but I would advise against this for the most part because that tagline is so much smaller typically than the other elements in the logo that once it's sized down, you're not going to be able to read the tagline. So I would say limit the use of taglines in your logo design if possible. You can always create another file without the tagline included if you really want a logo version with the tagline included for specific things that you're using it on. So let's look at some other things that they're kind of like the rules, the aesthetic rules for designing logos. You know, you want to think of these as guidelines. You know, one thing you want to do when you design a logo is you want to keep it simple. Simple logos are easier to remember, and they're more easily recognizable because they're easier to remember. So for the most part, keep it simple. Another thing about simple logos is they're probably going to print better at different sizes on different materials than the more complicated logos. And so they're just going to be more utilitarian and just easier to work with in general if they're relatively simple. Clean, you know, this is a little bit more technical, but make sure the shapes you use in your logo design are clean. That means when you zoom in Illustrator, all paths are closed, and there shouldn't be any stray anchor points in your document. All shapes should be a minimum amount of anchor points, and all curves should be as smooth as possible. Overlapping shapes in a logo design should be joined together so that when you change the color of that shape, it changes everything at once, so that you're not having to go into multiple shapes unnecessarily to change the color of your logo. I'm not saying you should be changing the color of your logo willy-nilly, but so you want to keep it clean. That's more of a technical thing. We'll talk about that a little bit more as we go along, but just try to pay attention to that. So a great logo should be designed in a way that allows for it to be sized down to a very small size and still be readable and recognizable. So a lot of times when you make a promotional item, maybe you want to put it on a little writing pen, and you're making pens with your logo on it. You know, that logo on that pen is going to shrink down so small. So that's why you really want to make sure that you can read your logo, you can recognize it at a really small size. And make sure everything in the design of your logo is around the same size. So if you have a logo that has an element that's way smaller than the rest, say the text of the logo is way smaller than the symbol, or vice versa, once you size that down, you might still be able to see the symbol, but you won't be able to see the text. So definitely keep things around the same size. Like, as you can see, like with this logo here, Aston Martin right here, Aston Martin, once that size is down, you can't read it. You can still recognize the symbol itself, but you can't read that text in there anymore. Of course, if you could read it there, I mean, because there's, so that these two things are too far off, but the text down here is around the same size as the symbol. So try to keep the elements in the actual design around the same size so that they are scalable when they shrink down, so that one element within the design doesn't get too small to read. You want it all to be legible. You want to make your logo design memorable, impactful. You want to leave a positive impression. You want it to be relevant to what the company does. Definitely don't go with that unintended symbolism if you can help it. Flexible, should look good on a variety of different background values and colors. So either light or dark backgrounds are typically what you're going to be working with. So this might require having different logo colors for different background colors, such as having a white logo for darker backgrounds and a black logo for lighter backgrounds. That's often very common. Unique. Make sure you distinguish your logo from competitor logos, especially. You want your logo to stand out, not blend in or be confused with another company's logo. Color considerations. First off, this is very important. Your logo should look good using only black to start off with. Black isn't even technically a color, it's a neutral, but it is definitely the most important color that you can use for a logo design. Any good logos should look good in using only black. A strong logo doesn't need color to stand out. So because of this, I suggest starting off with black only in your logo design, then saving that, getting approval from the client, and then adding color later. So when it comes to color, I would say only use 2 or 3 colors. And this is because color logos can be pretty expensive to print, depending on the printing technique you're using. Screen printing or embroidering a logo with 6 colors is obviously going to be more expensive than embroidering something with 3 colors or 2 colors. So 2 or 3 colors at most is probably the way to go as far as color applications go to your logo design. Also use colors that go with the brand of your company. Usually brand colors are derived directly from a company's logo, so the jumping off point for your brand as far as color goes is going to start in the logo design. So remember, the colors you use in your logo will be injected into every marketing material you put out there. So if you're wondering what colors your brand should go with, start by looking up color symbolism and make sure to pick colors that tie into the mission, values, and personality of your brand. So here's some psychology. Red is excitement, orange confidence, yellow creativity, green is nature, healing, blue is trust. So you can kind of look through these. White is clean, simple, black is formal, dramatic. So there is psychology behind each color, and certain colors look good together, certain colors don't. So with the typography, make sure the text doesn't detract from the icon. Stick with legible fonts. Bolder fonts work well. And make sure to outline your fonts in your logo files. Also, don't go with fonts that have really thin thins and really thick thicks, because when you size it down, you won't be able to see those thins anymore. Running out of time here. Make sure it's visually appealing. Does your logo look good? Is it attractive? Is it something you would want on an article of clothing that you would wear around? If not, you might want to start over. That's one of the main, things that's the most important thing really with logo design. Does it look good? So we'll go over logo design part 2, the fundamentals, but the not so basic fundamentals, in the next video.